Hey folks, David Stewart here. I got a great little email tonight from a young man sharing a concern that many people have, many young people in particular. He's worried that after he graduates college, he's going to graduate college soon. He's not going to have the time or energy to work on his creative endeavors while working a full-time job. And he wants to know, how do you balance that home life balance or the creative work balance? He also wants to know, how do you eventually turn this into a career? And a little bit of background on him. I won't give any serious identifying information, but he began a 9-to-5 job over the summer and found that his progress on his book basically stalled out. It's a really common experience. I've stalled out on books before. And so that creates a concern. How am I going to have the time to work on this creative stuff that I'm really passionate about going forward? And I actually still struggle with this, and I've struggled with it from the beginning. I got my first full-time job when I was 17. And it was actually not a 9-to-5 job. It was a 6 a.m. to 3 p.m. job, and quickly turned into a 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. job, an 11-hour-a-day job. And when you're working a lot, and when you're working those long hours, it's hard to have the physical energy, and it's also hard to have the spiritual energy to go home and put that energy into a creative endeavor. Lots of people have this, not just musicians and authors and creative type of people, but if somebody's working on a second business, how do you balance that? If you have a really important hobby that's very, very important to you and you're passionate about it, how are you going to have time to work on that and manage this full-time job? I sent this young man some advice, and I'd like to share some of that advice with you. I gave 4 important pieces of advice, or 4 things to think about that I think can improve the outlook and your mindset for that. So the first one, and this is really the most important one if you are young, because you can really do this well when you're young and capitalize on its effects, which is you can reduce your lifestyle. And what I mean by that is you work less hours. You make less money, of course, but you also reduce your costs so that you don't have to work all these long hours. You reduce your costs, reduce your work. You have a bunch of extra free time, and you can spend that and invest it in yourself. You can spend it on improving your skills. You can spend it on your creative endeavors, on your art. You can spend it on your businesses. You could spend it on working out and making yourself healthy. You could spend it on having fun. And most importantly, you can take risks with that time. Something that you can do when you're young and you can't really do when you're older. When you're older and you get more set and you have more obligations, it's much more difficult to take risks. Me right now, someone called me up on the phone and said, "Can you get here in 10 days?" I can't. But if you're 22, it's really easy. If someone calls you up and says, "I have an opportunity for you, can you get here in 10 days? Yes, I can. When you're young, you can take those risks. And so when you're first getting out of college, you don't need to worry about having a 40-hour-a-week job, being on track to have the best career or something right away. You can take all of those risks. And you ought to take those risks because those are big life experiences that will teach you a huge amount, will enrich your character, will teach you additional skills that your competition might not have in the marketplace, and may enhance your success later. And you may find an opportunity that's just really golden that wouldn't have been available to you if you had gotten into this track of working, working a 9-to-5, 40-hour-a-week job, getting a mortgage, all that kind of stuff. You don't need to have all that when you're young because you don't have a family. You don't have all those obligations. So when you don't have those obligations, reduce your lifestyle, live cheaply, and spend the rest of the time on yourself. My anecdote, and I've always had this, I've basically always lived this lifestyle from the beginning. I've always struggled with having to have this balance, but the way that I've always, been able to feel satisfied with a lot of what I'm doing is I've had this approach. I've lived in several cities. In Fresno and Bakersfield, I lived very cheap lifestyles. But where I really mastered this and where it really benefited me the most was when I lived in Las Vegas. I lived in Las Vegas for 2 years, and I lived for $1,000 a month. It'd be kind of hard to live for $1,000 a month today. This was like 2011 to about 2013. So things are a little more expensive now, but for $1,000 a month, I paid all my rent. I paid my gas. I paid my health insurance, car insurance, power, water, sewer, gas, and bought food. And I managed to get all of that to about $1,000, which meant $1,000 in a month is really easy to come up with. It's really easy to come up with $1,000 to pay your bills. In fact, I worked less than 20 hours most weeks, I could work like 12 hours a week and pay all my bills. Just like play a gig and teach some lessons at the music store, and I pretty much was going to have all my money at the end of the month to do fine for the next month. So I lived on about $1,000, and the other advantage of this lifestyle was that $1,000, because I had, a very, very small budget for food. Ended up with really good nutrition because I had to buy ingredients and cook them. I lost about 80 pounds when I was in Las Vegas. My extra time, I spent 2 to 4 hours a day at the gym, working out, doing cardio, lifting weights, getting in great shape. And I had a roommate. That's one of the ways that you can save on rent. My roommate, who you've actually seen on the channel, Matt Wellman, he lived the same lifestyle. Got in great shape. And if you made more than $1,000, you could save it. You could spend it on something. You could take a trip or go to a concert and do something fun with it. Or you could invest it in something new, or you could even gamble it away. I never gambled, but you could do that. And so I always had a little bit extra and I could save it. And so if something came up, like I needed a new tire, I'd have savings. So that $1,000 a month also gives you a big buffer to just save a lot of money, because $1,000 a month is really easy to make. You can make $1,000 a month on minimum wage, not even working full time, pretty much without any problems. But in order to do that, you pretty much have to be young. And it's really easy for young men to scale their lifestyle down if they're willing to do it. And it tends to be a little bit harder for older folks like me, because we have so many obligations. It's also a little harder for young women. They tend to have more miscellaneous expenses, and especially a need for better housing. So when you scale your lifestyle down, you can be like me, choose a cheap apartment, live with a roommate. Your rent's like $300-$400 a month. And, if you know another $600 to spend on food and bills, and anything you make above $1,000 is gravy. You can do whatever you need to do with it. You can take risks with it, and you're probably not going to be out that much money. It's not like, oh, I should have saved that $200 from 4 years ago. It's like, oh, I spent the $200 on a trip and it was fun, and it gave me a memory that lasts a lifetime, and that's good too. So the first most important thing you can do, shrink that lifestyle down. That's going to give you tons of free time to have fun, read books like I did, play games, write your book, work on your music, work on yourself, make yourself into a great person. When you are ready to scale up the amount of time you spend in the workplace, you'll be more intelligent, you'll be more learned, you'll have more experience in life than your competition, and you'll probably have a little bit of an edge in terms of your creative output early on as well. So that's the first one. Number 2 is develop a process rather than focus on goals. This is something I talk about often on the channel. If you sit down and write 1,000 words a day, that's 365,000 words a year. That's 3 novels. You've drafted 3 novels a year just sitting down and doing that same thing over and over. And the more you do it, the better you get at it, the quicker those 1,000 words come. So for this young man, if he had stuck with 1,000 words a day and done it no matter what, made it a habit, he probably would have finished his book by now. And if you make it so it's one of these obligate, it's like brushing your teeth. You're not going to go to bed without brushing your teeth. You're not going to go to bed without writing your 1,000 words. You're going to find that it's going to deliver your goals for you. And that's true for anything, whether it's dieting or fitness, or it's writing a book, or it's building something on your land. If you want to build a barn, you go out and you work on it every day, boom, eventually there's a barn. And you're like, where did this barn come from? Turns out working an hour a day on something can yield incredible results over time. So develop a process rather than focus on the goals, and the process will just work itself forward. It'll just go. And that was the other great thing about Las Vegas, is I developed an ironclad process for everything in my life that delivered on my goals. It gave me the body I wanted. It gave me the mind I wanted. It gave me a book at the end of it. It gave me my wife. It gave me everything. Like, it gave me my life. Was stripping all the BS out and going down to the smallest possible life I can live, and spending all the time directed inward to improve myself. And it was a big process. I didn't go to the gym when I felt like it. I went to the gym at midnight every single night, midnight to 2 a.m. That was when we worked out. Number 3, value. This is something you have to consider. A piece of advice: weigh the value of your creative work versus your need to receive payment for it. So what I mean by that is, how important is it to you that you are a writer versus how important is it to you that you're writing the work that you want to write? Or as a musician, how important is it to you that you are living the category musician versus playing the music you want, because I did okay as a classical guitarist. You know, I made enough money to live, and it's easy to make enough money to live when you're only living on $1,000 a month. But as a classical guitarist, I spent all my time playing music from dead people because other people, that's what they wanted to hear. So it was not creative fulfilling for me pretty quick, actually, but eventually it was very unfulfilling. And I looked at it and I'm like, I'd rather work a day job, because I'm doing the same amount of work with practice and gigging, and I'd probably make more money at the day job, and it'd be more secure, and I still wouldn't be fulfilled, right? But who cares? I'm not fulfilled playing classical guitar. I'm playing somebody else's music. I'm a jukebox. I'm a live jukebox. That's what it is. It's like, to me, that's not fulfilling. And maybe to you, and I don't want to make anybody feel bad that they enjoy playing classical guitar music. But for me, it made me feel like a jukebox, and I didn't want to do that. I wanted to play my music. I'm a composer. So you have to weigh that, and you have to determine if you'd rather work full time or you'd rather have a job. I prefer if you scale your lifestyle down and work, spend your free time on awesome stuff, especially when you're young and you're poor and can take those risks. But, to weigh working full time and spending a smaller amount of time being creative on the things you care about versus working in the area that you want to creatively, like being a writer, being an artist, but working towards what other people want you to do, which is not necessarily what you want to do, and how you want to balance it. I think there is a balancing point. Like, you want to find what you really want to do that you're good at and that people actually want you to do at the same time. And when those things meet up, that's a lot of satisfaction there. And that's the dream, is to find how those meet up. But you're going to have to give up a little bit as a creative person. The question is, how much are you willing to give up? It may be a thing that's like, I really want to write this epic fantasy series. And then it's like, well, they want me to change all these things I think are really important in my book. And it's really good to be able to say, I don't need the advance, or I don't need the money. I'm going to self-publish it, and I'm going to go be a welder, right? And if you're making your bread doing a creative business, it's really tough sometimes to walk away from money. So if you're an actor and your bread comes from acting, and the only acting gig in town that month is a play where you have to be naked, that really sucks if you have no other way to make money. But it's okay if you also are a welder. You're like, I'm just going to go get a welding job. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to degrade myself. I'm not going to do something I don't care about. Or I'm not going to act in a play that I hate. So being able to choose how you want to be creative is a self-fulfilling thing, and you have to weigh how much that is. Everyone has their tipping point of stuff they're not willing to do creatively, and you have to kind of figure out where yours is. Number fourth piece of advice: think of what you do as an investment rather than work that you need return on. This is the biggest mindset adjustment that I think most creative people have to make, and most young people in general. I think we're trained to get immediate rewards for everything and not think of what we're doing as an investment. And I said this to the person who wrote the email. I said, poor people think of finding work. Rich people think of investments and returns. Finding work is selling your time. How do I find a job and achieve security? Your first mind is on security, not on really getting a return and making wealth. When you make a book, you're creating an investment. You're putting your time into it, and it's going to yield a return, and it can yield a return in two ways. First way it can yield a return is a spiritual return. You've accomplished a project that is meaningful to you and gives your life additional meaning. And that is something that is a non-monetary reward, but to me is much more powerful than what you get from the money. The other return on the investment is that when you publish it, whether you self-publish it or you traditionally publish it, you'll get paid royalties, but the royalties kind of accrue over time and are paid out over time. So it's a thing where, like, you publish it and maybe you only make $5 the first month. But if you make $5 a month on it in perpetuity, and that maybe that even grows a little bit, eventually you get a return on that investment. It just takes a long time for that investment to sort of accrue and yield its returns, and those returns are given over time. Too many people are like, I have this idea for a book. How do I get money to write it? I've gotten this before. It's like, you don't. You have to write the entire thing, and it has to be done and ready to go before anyone will give you a single dime for it. So you have to look at it as an investment. I'm investing my time into something I care about, and I'm going to get a type of return for it, rather than how do I get paid for this? Because you're thinking like selling your time. There's nothing wrong with selling your time. We all sell our time in different ways. But when it comes to being creative, you don't want to sell your time. You want to invest in your creation. And that's a little bit different way of thinking of it. And whenever you feel like it's really hard at any given moment to sit down and be creative, you have to go back and think about the product that's going to come out of that. And you'll see that what you're doing during that moment is leading to that. It's an investment in that. And it's going to give you some kind of return. And then it's going to feel a lot better to sit down and do it. So those are my 4 pieces of advice, and hopefully you found them helpful and useful and interesting. I hope you will also give me some advice too if you have some extra things that you'd like to add to that. Everybody in the end has to figure out their own system for balancing home and work life. I certainly struggle with it all the time. It's really hard for me to find time to make YouTube videos and make books and do all this other sort of stuff that I do. But I do my very, very best. The one thing that I think I have an advantage on compared to a lot of people that I'll admit is that I am extremely driven. I'm very, very intense about what I do. And I have always been that way. That first job I had that was 11 hours a day, I worked from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m., got off work, went straight to rehearsal, started writing and recording music and playing with people and working towards gigs, and would, gig on Friday and Saturday night. And that's how I was super passionate about it. And I never thought about, oh my God, I'm exhausted, I want to go home and do something else. I got off work at 5, I punched out, and I was ready. I was like, I cannot wait to get my guitar in my hands and get to work. I was so excited about it. I was so intense about what I was doing. As an undergraduate, there were many weekends where I would go into the lab. I'd go into the studio on a Friday afternoon after class, or maybe after a football game. I was in the marching band. I had a scholarship actually for being in the marching band. So maybe there was a football game on Saturday night or something, sometimes on Friday, but I'd be at the music building on a Friday afternoon, and I wouldn't leave until class began on Monday morning. I would not pull an all-nighter. I'd pull a 2-nighter, a 3-nighter. And that's because I was so intensely into whatever that project I was working on, whatever the piece I was trying to create, whatever recording I was trying to do that weekend, that it just didn't even faze me. I had access to Dr. Pepper and Red Bull at the 7-Eleven across the street, and I had a key to the music building, and I had no problem working for 3 days straight, and I enjoyed it. I couldn't do that now because I'm old and I got too many other things to do, but that's how intense I was. And so for me, it's really easy, even now, to work 18 hours a day and sleep 6 hours a day, like what Arnold Schwarzenegger would say to do. And I'm not tired. Like right now, it's like 12:30. It's 12:30 a.m. And I'm not really tired because I'm very intense about wanting to make this video and wanting to do all the other stuff that I do. That it doesn't drain me. I'm excited to work. I'm excited to do certain things. And that's just maybe, I don't know if that's an inbred advantage or I don't know where that comes from, but I've always been extremely intense, and that's always helped me to be passionate. If I'm really passionate, it's easy. I never feel tired about it. I'm always excited to get up and do the things that I'm excited about, and I love what I have in my life. So thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. You can find me all over the internet, davidvstewart.com, dvspress.com, facebook.com/David Van Dyke Stewart. All the other ones are /David V. Stewart, twitter.com David V. Stewart, gab.ai/David V. Stewart. If you want to donate to me on Patreon, I'm super, super appreciative of anything you give me. Patreon.com/David V. Stewart, and I will have those Star Wars videos coming pretty soon. Have to rewatch movies and come up with talking points and all that kind of stuff. But I'll see you guys next time. Have a great, great day.